Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whether in St. Lucia or in the diaspora. Welcome once again to Moving Forward. That deals only in facts, and the title of the program tonight is The Pot Calling the Kettle Black. And as I delve into this program, many of you will realize why the title is so. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go into full drive, I want to thank Andy Hayward from London, Hugh Matry from St. Lucia, my good friends in New York, especially those in Brooklyn, Anthony Emmanuel, Merle Flores, and least but not last, those in Dominica and elsewhere. I'm indeed grateful that you now see that this program is at another level compared to others. As I step up the pace, God is in his infinite mercy is giving me the drive I need because of my faith and trust in Philip Joseph Pierre. Not because he is a comrade, because of his empathy, humility, his integrity, and his passion for his fellow countrymen or women, and because he really cares for the poor and dispossessed. Therefore, I now want to say to you all, to encourage your friends to tune in tonight because I have so much to say. It will be scintillating. However, tonight, before we go into the nitty-gritty of the program, let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Oh, Father, I come to you once again, because, as always, we need your guiding hands in everything we do. More so, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, who is making every effort to put the country back on keel after the mess that was left behind by the last one. We ask you, Father, to give our humble Prime Minister the health and strength he needs to bring about the change that is needed for the better. Oh, Father, give all those entrusted in the leadership positions the strength they need to understand that working together and cooperating together and will make us much stronger than we are. As always, I put my faith and trust in you because, without a doubt, you are the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, and the Lord of Lords. Amen. Tonight I quote from Exodus chapter 21, verses 12 to 20, which deals with laws about violent acts. Whoever hits a man and kills him is to be put to death. But if it was an accident and he did not mean to kill the man, he can escape to a place which I will choose for you, and there he will be safe. But when a man gets angry and deliberately kills another man, he is to be put to death. Even if he has run to my altar for safety, whoever hits his father or his mother is to be put to death. Whoever kidnaps a man, either to sell him or to keep him as a slave, is to be put to death. Nearly all the whites should for slavery. Whoever curses his father or his mother is to be put to death if there is a fight, and one man hits another with a stone or with his fist, but does not kill him, he is not to be punished. If the man who was hit has to stay in bed, but later is able to get up and walk outside with the help of a cane, the man who hit him is to pay for his lost time and take care of him until he gets well. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Oh, tonight, I feel good, as I mentioned before, as always, because the truth is being revealed every time evil men and women try to blemish others of their own criminal device. The good Lord steps in to defend the good in our society. I'm without a doubt talking about the criticisms of the opposition leader and his band of merry men and women that has been thrown at the Prime Minister and government in trying to bring out legislation that was unnecessary, unfair, and inappropriate. Clearly, in truth and in fact, it was the leader of the opposition who signed the agreement when he was Prime Minister. This is a clear case of double talk and dishonesty at the highest level. That is why we are beginning to see the strange death of the United Workers' Party that has now become the United Wreckers of the Poor under the leadership of a man who is not a product of this country, yet he has his lapdogs who fail to realize that he is leading them to the never, never land. You hear those lapdogs on radio and on television continually trying to deceive the people of this country that this government is involved in wrongdoings. But the truth will come out of that special prosecutor if he is doing his job efficiently and effectively. The demise of that opposition party is unfolding before our very eyes. And what is pleasing for me, or pleasing in sight, I would say, is that it looks as if the saying, "For whom the bell tolls," that is, for thee, Alan, and the united wreckers of the poor, the reprobates and motley crew, is coming to pass. These people are literally taking the party to hell in their own particular handbasket. Whatever new force someday arises on the opposition side, we shall not see the old UWP ever again, the one that Sir John Compton and others brought to life and to run this country for many years. It is sad to see the demise of that party. I've always been told that to have good government, you need a damn good opposition. And looking back, that is what we saw when the government at present was in opposition. Therefore, nowhere does that bell toll more tellingly than in the pages of the United Workers' Party, still spitting out its failed, bileless message. What we saw at the last election was the final trouncing of that party as a political force in the land. However, even in their never land, they keep blasting away at the Labour Party with their full artillery, which seems to be short of any powder, like some Chinese missiles. The present opposition seems to like to talk the talk and simply cannot walk the talk, because that is what they were like in government. They were simply useless, inefficient, and ineffective, using hard-earned taxpayers' money on trivial things such as the DSH project that brought no real jobs to St. Lucians. Only foreigners seems to have been the benefactors of the few races they had in the country, because our people needed training. In truth and in fact, the Kakabef races were a dumb sight, more classical and more enjoyable and rewarding than the tribe this guy brought to our country and had the audacity to call it the sport of kings. What we needed was the sports that the little man enjoyed. Now he is out there trying to convince St. Lucians that he was looking to the future as the benefits that DSH could have brought to St. Lucia, while all the time the big money was being spent on DSH. Nothing was being put seriously into our education, into health, infrastructure, agriculture, etc. People must never forget that the intentions of the last government, as has been alleged, was to turn OKEU into a private hospital. And Victoria would have been some rundown establishment for the poor of the country. However, the good Lord works in many good ways. And the Prime Minister then, at the last resort, due to COVID-19, was forced to open OKEU because Victoria could not cope. What amazes me in education, this is the same Prime Minister then who took the laptop program put in place for our children by the previous Labour government. They simply curtailed that. Further to that, I want St. Lucians to ask those nurses who left the service and went overseas, not just for better pay or wage, but because of the numerous problems that arose under the last government. These nurses had to leave more so to keep their sanity. When you tell someone who has worked for so many years under the public service and who is looking for a gratuity, pension, etc., and to tell them that they are being put on contract for 2 years, and to the extent they have no job security as nurses, that is absolutely a travesty of justice. And these reprobates should never be elected again. They should be thrown into the dustbin of political history, and to make sure that it is a dustbin that literally stinks of the crap they spew out. Before continuing, I went into my archives to do my research, And I came up with an article written on the 15th of March, 1997, by no other than Michael Chasney. Before going into the details, I want to send him my get well wishes and to have faith and trust in the One Most High. I said to him, comrade, much of our ailment is in the mind, and we can overcome it if we are positive in our thinking. I hope that which I'm about to expound on the show, thinking then and now, be given serious thought as I have done. Hope you remember this piece well, because you wrote it. It began by saying, the spate of health failures within the political arena in recent times is significant of the pressure directed at the candidates on both sides of the fence. He went on to write, 1. Clearly understands the reasoning why politicians tend to work feverishly some 180 days or so prior to election day. To begin, elections are held only once every 5 years, unless, of course, the government completely mishandles the situation. Consequently, politicians look at this 5-year period as a jail sentence, and they hate to wait, especially on the wrong side of the fence. That is what I have taken out of the first part of the short article. And I want each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen, to digest what is being said. However, the crux of that article to me was when he wrote about, apart from the individuals whose genetic health disorders have been dormant and only tend to surface when pressure mounts, there are other candidates who lack the confidence, skill, and tenacity without themselves, and there lies another form of danger. That brought a huge smile into my face while reading, because of what has been happening lately. Let us proceed. He went on to write that the role of a politician is very complex. The candidate should first acknowledge the ongoing criteria, a strong and well-defined character, a non-controversial personality, one who is able to listen and quickly assess matters to the satisfaction of the voter, being able to present the right perceptions, one who is able to readily accept and convince the voter that the past should not affect the future performance, a very confident individual who should avoid vacillation, and a very disciplined and diplomatic person. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a formidable list of attributes that a politician should have inherent inside of them. However, he went on to write that these are very significant requirements for any one person. This is why so few of us are able to fit the bill. So many end up stressed out, getting into financial difficulties, and eventually becoming depressed and very bitter. Oh my, I would say. Are we not seeing some of this in an individual in the opposition? He went on to emphasize that politics is a business, and in business, the higher the stakes, the more stressful it becomes. Hence, the reason why individuals who enter the political field should give due consideration to those stringent requirements, lest their future become permanently impaired. He then made it clear that once the successful political candidate enters office, the stress does not end. In fact, a new kind of stress manifests itself. At least some of the promises and changes must be implemented by the successful government, as the public, we know, can be very demanding. So for these politicians, this is not an easy task. Hopefully, St. Lucia and the successful government will be spared of any unnecessary turmoil and labor unrest in the coming months and years, as the island needs to settle down to reduce this lingering aggression. Failure to address these issues create an ongoing lack of confidence in the economy. I brought much of that to the fore because it is relevant. And to be written by the father of a particular ex-prime minister and leader of the opposition at present is significant because these wise words should have been passed on to the individual instead of the problems he's causing day in and day out, in the house especially, literally making an ass out of himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to be the judge in terms of what has been brought to the fore in elucidating the life of a politician by Michael Chasney nearly 27 years ago. Much of what he wrote is still relevant today, but it's not acceptable from what I see by the leader of the opposition and his well-known poodles and reprobates. I've brought all this to the fore because many of us know what is right and what is wrong. And when it suits us, we move away from the truth that confronts us. I just cannot tolerate that. Therefore, I say to this government, always be truthful to the people who voted you into office, and even those who did not, because we are in a democracy, and as a government, you represent each and every one of us. So at this juncture, I'll take my first break, and I will be back. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I was talking about something written 27 years ago by the father of the opposition leader. My only beef is that some of those at the higher echelon of the public service should have been moved around because they were upholding the disgusting attitude that then prevailed. We see it in commerce, tourism, infrastructure that has seen a remarkable transformation. The health service and even education, which has had a little change. We cannot continue to have the mem bet mem puel scenario that seems to have prevailed. Ladies and gentlemen, in St. Lucia and in the diaspora, I wanted, above all tonight, to really tackle our medical issues as far as I can go, as the minister is trying his best to make sweeping changes that he hopes will benefit the people of St. Lucia. A much better, or something much better than in the past, or what was left behind by the last government. He's making a concerted effort to make things better, and we must applaud him. And don't allow the virus of mouths and tongues that emanate from mendicants, jackasses, and backing dogs deter us from the work that the minister is doing. According to their leader, and I quote, "Let the barking dogs bray." Looking back at the health service, the attempts to destroy was there. It would have been taking place if the last government had stayed in power. That is guaranteed. Their aim was to bring a large-scale privatization, more so with the newly built OKEU hospital. This I say in all sincerity. That would have been simply unforgiving of the last government, and God is in infinite mercy kicked them out of office at the right time. Today, we have a service that is hamstrung by so many of our well-qualified and long-service nurses leaving because of poor working conditions. And not only that, as I've mentioned before, the idea of working on a 2-year contract, it is still on. This government must abandon this warped idea and bring back our nurses into the public service work structure. The minister and the higher echelon and unions should be working with the nurses to improve economic efficiency and production by the people of the country and have a decent medical service to look after them when they fall sick. I therefore ask the opposition, what were they thinking of in the way they went about dismantling the medical service of the country at that level? Why did they not take that attitude with the doctors that they took with the nurses? I'm now asking the same question of the present government. They have to make things better and to ameliorate the situations that the nurses face at this juncture in time. Our nurses cannot continue to pack up and leave, and those who don't, as I have been told, is simply because they have a young child or two. However, if they could take their children with them, they would certainly leave, because there is no future for them in the health service. I say aloud to the last government that you were the instigators of what is happening, because it was your drive to punish the people of the country by making them suffer through an inefficient health service where patients had to pay for everything, and those who could not afford simply whittled away. Minister of Health, I know that you are trying because of the new proposals you are now putting in place for the polyclinics and elsewhere. But the plight of the nurses are most important, because without good and excellent service from the nurses of the country, our health service will degenerate into the dustbins of history. This was a government that did not care about trade unions, bar one who seem affiliated to them, pardon the pun. They did not realize that trade unionism was not about party politics, but the representation of workers. Therefore, I am of the view that the health minister should be worried that St. Lucia are losing world-class nurses in the health service because working conditions are, in their view, poor and very poor. Not only that, the contract that is being given without any gratuity is a serious problem as far as nurses are concerned. And I have interviewed quite a few of them, Minister. What must come to the fore is the realization that patients' lives is somewhat being put at risk by shortages of nursing staff, and also the length of time nurses have to work because of the shortage. The country is aware of when the problem began, and no one can deny that. We saw the attitude of the last government even during COVID-19, and it is because of things getting out of hand that they finally decided to move to OKEU, because they had no intentions of moving until they had settled their private deal with Cayman Islands Group. That we must never forget, ladies and gentlemen, because I am sure that they will now try to undermine this Minister of Health, who is doing all he can within his ambit. However, in this case, I say to him that patience is a virtue, and not to be deterred by the United Records of the Poor and their so-called surrogates. What I'm being told is that, as in some jobs, when one is on lunch break, especially now with the nurses, they cannot leave the premises like other jobs or be too far away from their work in case of an emergency. Think of it. These are the same things the ordinary man or woman on the street does not realize, and why, in my view, the nursing profession should be held in high esteem and paid a decent wage. Therefore, when the opposition quibble about 2.5% in that respect to maintain a health society or service, then they are just deliberate and trying their best to foster alarm and despondency when there is no validity for this behavior. In improving the service, we need to see more consultation, ongoing dialogue, and engagement with the workforce, rather than the introduction of mechanisms that reflect the industrial relations challenges that came into being from 2016 onwards to 2021. I believe that the government on the whole should listen to the voices of the people, because people need to feel confident and comfortable talking about health issues. And it it only has to take one or two people to do so in order to open up the conversation or discussion for others to join in. Health issues are one that needs to be discussed at all levels. Yes, tonight I am making the issue of health service one that needs to be thrashed out thoroughly. I've been doing my research, and to be honest, it is a subject that needs to be aired so that people will understand. We need a first-class health service, but it will not be cheap. They must know, people must understand that. However, it is necessary so. Any levy is, in my view, justified. If not, society would crumble if our poor cannot be looked after because of the poor medical service. There is no doubt that circumstances make some people behave unprofessionally, and the health service has its fair share of high-pressured scenarios. I firmly believe in quality care, but people must be prepared to contribute, even in a third world country like St. Lucia. In this country, when I speak with medical staff, the results I get are that many indicate that they feel as though that they have been undervalued. There's no doubt that performance pressure at present is unlike anything that staff had experienced previously. The sustained pressure was affecting the service's value and culture and causing some of its employees to exhibit behaviors that were not always consistent with the caring profession. Since the last government was in power, the whole landscape has changed beyond recognition, and the pressures push staff into extreme circumstances, which I've alluded to in the amount of nurses going overseas. If the last government had continued, we would be operating in a culture of neglect of patients. We need to do more to show staff that they are valued and giving them the opportunity to speak out when they have had concerns about the culture and environment. That is the best way to improve the condition of work and care. However, I do believe sincerely those incidents of unacceptable behavior cannot be entertained. I also believe that the powers that be must provide compulsory training for all staff on a regular basis. At this juncture, what we are seeing is what I have been told on my research is that many more nurses felt that the powers that be like things to fester. For example, incidents cannot be left unresolved for year on year. There are incidences when incidents have occurred, no one have had an actually honest conversation with the individuals concerned. This cannot be allowed to continue, or, as mentioned before, fester. The key to some success is quick intervention, getting people out of their busy worlds and talking to each other, and then helping them to work better, more so with their colleagues. I'm of the view that more concentrated management training has become a necessity for all managers as part of the ministry's commitment to its new values. There is no doubt in my mind that staff engagement and organizational culture is paramount in achieving a satisfactory service. I deliberately took a little time to outline certain issues in the health service because the last government neglected the service because their aim was to privatize the service so as to accommodate overseas patients who were prepared to pay big money for patient care at the expense of the poor in this country. I believe that these reprobates should be ashamed of themselves to even talk about the medical service in St. Lucia under the Labour government. Much of the ill-feeling and bad management of the service came under them, more so with the higher echelon of management in the service. Some are still there, but thank God quite a few have left, one way or the other. And it's at this juncture, I'll take my second break and I'll be back. You see, I'm getting excited. I'll be back. Welcome back to Moving Forward, and we're talking about nurses and medical services. So it is at this juncture, I want to go back to the last Sunday when I spoke about the DSH deal of selling land at $1 an acre when compared to the many that paid or pay for their land per square foot. What I want to put forward at this juncture is the land price around the country. In essence, it is still not cheap, because I'm sure that it is only in certain areas that we may be lucky to buy land $10 or under a square foot. Please, please, Alan, try and find that $7.3 million for virus that we never, or vaccine we've never got. The one that you simply squandered, because I can tell you this, it can go so much for St. Jude Hospital. That amount of money would help St. Jude. However, to sell that land, even at that price, at $1 an acre, to T.O.R. King, is sheer dishonesty at the highest level. Can one imagine how many square feet are involved and what the price would be? Ladies and gentlemen, I leave it to your imagination, because it would be a hefty price. So when I see that nonsensical deal that was done by Alan, it is simply unimaginable. And further to that, what had to be done to tolerate this? I still want to know what happened to the meat processing factory that was built at a cost of nearly $30 million. What many have not realized is that it is still there, because it is on the land sold to T.O.R. King at $1 an acre. He had promised to build 2 smaller versions, but have done nothing to that extent so far. Therefore, the meat processing factory now sits like a piece of Taiwanese ornament. That cannot be right. What one thinks about, when one thinks about it, that is a deal can be made, a deal like that can be made to the extent that a building of that nature, a new building, can simply be guarded in that manner, or regarded in that manner and put aside, and nothing is being said or done about it. No work is going on there. A businessman from anywhere in the world could not go to China and do such a deal, and it will be accepted by the Chinese government. No way. That was the type of colonial-minded deals that was done by the Alan Chastanet past government and his poodles. Before going into my final segment, I want to point out that this government must not allow itself to be manipulated by some individuals, because they think that they are owed something from the present government, because they work to an extent in getting them into office. There are some who have been disappointed. However, there are those who are not, and have simply used the relationship with the party and even government to get jobs, and decided that they will do very little. I am of the view that fair is fair, truth is truth, and dishonesty has no place in the amount of work one does for their pay. On a contract, if one wants it to be renewed, then they have to do the work that the contract demands. Not doing so because you believe that you have a foothold in the party or government is unacceptable and cannot be entertain. I believe individuals like these will never give a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. That is for sure. And it should not be accepted under any circumstances. Therefore, to hear certain people crying over spilt milk, that was their fault, not wanting or looking for sympathy. I will not give sympathy for an individual of that ilk. At this juncture, I want to say again something to the political leader that I believe sincerely will lead this country into the promised land, as I have mentioned before. I want to reiterate this piece of political philosophy to Philip Joseph Pierre as the Prime Minister of this country, that power means prosperity or poverty, happiness or tragedy for thousands of people. No leader can afford to forget that, because a political leader has to deal with people and nations as they are not as they should be. In a short, he or she must be a realist, exercising realpolitik. This is the use of a German word, not an idealist. Having power, the political leader must recognize that mistakes are inevitable and must be able to live and function with them. Dexter Yegan states that a winner is one who accepts his failures and mistakes, picks up the pieces and continues striving to reach his goals. Don't let anybody steal your dream. Contrary to what most people think and believe, there's no fun in being a chief executive. The flags, uniformed guards, imposing motorcades, as we see in St. Lucia, sumptuous banquets, cocktails, etc., are not there for the chief executive's pleasure. Rather, they define his office and add to its functioning. At no time should the political leader become swell-headed by the position and the power he wields. He must use that power constructively and not for personal aggrandizement. Another principal quality of the political leader is his ability to see above and beyond his contemporaries. He must have a lofty vision so as to speak. Something I want to stress is that Philip is rebuilding trust in many communities that the last government ignored because they had voted Labour in 2016. That was the extent of Ireland's vindictiveness, and it led to his dismal downfall, which in essence was inglorious. Philip, in my view, is also rebuilding the infrastructure as well as the social networks of the country's communities, such as roads, schools, and hospitals. Even to the extent we are seeing his determination to resurrect Marshall Grounds to its former glory days. This vibrant area of St. Lucia's sport was left to deteriorate and dismembered by the last government to almost be cast into the dustbin of the history of sports. But Philip, with his tenacity, guts, and determination, is making every effort to bring Marshall Grounds to its glory and former days. Marshall in itself is a historical sports ground that holds or held fond memories for many St. Lucians, sportsmen and women. I remember running to Marshall every time I came from school. It also developed youngsters in all sports, and it was a place for developing the camaraderie that brought many people, both young and old, together. Not only that, carnival was held there, and even to an extent, the Queen's Show, and also the best costume competition. We had all sorts there. Yes, Prime Minister, you are on the right track. Tonight, once again, I want to tackle some of the price hikes that has been taking place in some big supermarkets, and nothing seemed to be being done about this unacceptable piece of business price hike, I call it. The question I often ask is, why, when you are dealing with such a third world country that is solely dependent on tourism to an extent, I fail to understand the thinking behind the idea of making as much profit as one can at the expense of the poor people of this country. When you tell me that in a particular supermarket, and I have mentioned this before, that a supervisor cannot even make $2,000 a month, this is simply unacceptable. When middle top managers in the United States and elsewhere can take thousands of dollars in bonuses, it's totally madness. This is when I tell the leader of the opposition, this is not the colonialism that had a conscience, but neo-colonialism that is now even worse because it has no conscience at all, just exploitation at the highest level. I believe that the Consumer Protection Agency should now be reinforced and must monitor the gouging of prices that is taking place. If not, the government must have a prices and incomes policy. Trade unions must be accepted by these firms, and they cannot dictate to us that they will not accept trade unions on their premises. Some tried that in Barbados and were told that they simply cannot do business in Barbados unless there is a trade union representation for the workers. Tonight, once again, I will say without a doubt that we need the political system to be reformed. The colonial system which we still have in all ministries and is now archaic without a doubt. Looking at the political problems we now have with the deputy speaker, why can't he or she come from outside the house or party hierarchy? Why not someone even like me, for instance? Although I would certainly not tolerate some of the bizarre attitude of some at present in the House. What we saw in the past, more so from 2016 to 2021, is a leader who had no consistent core ideology, logic, or style. The consequences, as we saw, was disastrous. St. Lucia today is full of conflict because this is what emanated from the last government. I know for a fact that there is one thing that just about everyone with a bit of common sense agrees on. It is that Alan was unfit to be Prime Minister and now the leader of the opposition. Even his style of leadership had been inconsistent. He's an individual who is impatient or indecisive, stubborn or changeable, more so with his mouth. He was simply not keen to tackle the real issues that affected the little man, as Philip Joseph Pierre is prepared to deal with and to help where he can. Alan was a conservative and without a doubt not a reformer because, don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, he made it clear that colonialism had a conscience. He was simply not interested to tackle the issues that dealt with the poor in our society. Therefore, in my view, I fail to understand how anyone who is poor, dispossessed, or truly working class will ever vote for Alan. It's beyond me. Alan was only interested to stand on the side of those with vested interests and not for advocating for the disadvantaged or underprivileged. Alan, in my opinion, had an attitude and style that, in a sense, only cooked his goose. And that is why he was unceremoniously kicked out at the last election, hopefully to never resurface as Prime Minister of this country ever again. And it's at this juncture I'll take my next break and I'll be back. Welcome back to Moving Forward. In terms of Alan, there is a proverb I'd like to refer to, and that is, once bitten, twice shy. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I plead to each and every one of you listening to this program to come together, because then we can combine efforts and can create a country that responds to public opinion with a good system of government that benefits the people as a whole. It is only by doing so, or doing this, that we can enjoy a happy, joyful life. In speaking to you, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to encourage the whole country not to lose heart, because now we have a man who will lead this country to greater things. Therefore, you must maintain your passion for your country and to keep your love for the land and your compatriots. To remain confident, cool, calm, and collective, more so, confident in ourselves, to push for more improvement. And that has taken place slowly but surely under Philip Joseph Pierre. We must never forget the unfairness and injustice that we had to undergo under the last government. We therefore must continue to fight for a brighter future for St. Lucia under the leadership of Philip Joseph Pierre. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say this to you in all sincerity. That is, if we are to progress under Philip's leadership, we need to rely on the public and on social movements. It is a truism that there is no more room for any party that works counter to the will of the people. St. Lucia still has many problems, certainly. Not of the making of Philip. These problems are without a doubt political, economic, and socially related. Oh, tonight I feel in a good mood, because when I look at the animal antics of Alan in the house, what I see is an angry, bitter child who lost a game and thinks that the house is his and he wants to take it home with him. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my humor for tonight. He is without a doubt a spoiled brat. Before I end, I want the Prime Minister to lend an ear to public opinion and to draw up policies that are truly beneficial to the people as a whole. It is important that he attends to the needs of the underprivileged, and there must be fair allocation of resources, narrowing the wealth gap, so to speak, especially how to help the poor realize that St. Lucian dream. As mentioned before, some of the price hikes that have been taking place by big supermarkets have to end. Some prices and incomes policy must be brought in. If they continue to hike up prices as they do, these price hikes will put more financial pressure on average households, not to mention the underprivileged who are already struggling to make ends meet. Many, in my view, are still struggling merely to be free, because colonialism is still about, isn't it, in the form of neocolonialism? The question I ask is whether Alan was aware of this. In closing, I want to say quite categorically that the United Records of the Poor clearly does not fit the role of a loyal opposition party, such as one would normally expect to see in a democratic country like ours. Features of a loyal opposition party include conceding defeat after losing elections, yet holding on to its policy positions and ideals. I've mentioned this before and repeating it now, because the opposition seems to be getting even worse than I would ever have thought, with their misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, intimidation, peddling their fear of the country's collapsing under Philip. At present, the opposition seems to be adopting a scorched earth policy to boycott strategy in the legislature, making it ineligible to meet the standard definition of a loyal political opposition. We are clearly seeing this with the spoiled child's leader's attitude. in the House, that of working out. By doing so, he is deliberately not discussing the issues, because what is to be discussed is helping the country back on its feet. He wants to sour the accolades that the government is getting for its bold initiatives. For example, he was made an ass in the House when he should discuss for a motion put forward to be passed to the House. He huffed and puffed and suddenly walked out, only for the public to be told by the Prime Minister that the signature on the bill the government was putting through the House was one signed by no other than Alan Chasney when he was Prime Minister. In German, I would say, what a dumb cough. That is the level of opposition we get from reprobates on the other side of the House. I want him to remember his famous words that the truth is what you want it to be. Once again, I'm forced to come to an end, more so as I was enjoying expressing some of the willful disregard by the leader of the opposition to have a truthful debate in connection of bills that would benefit the country as a whole. Alan, in my view, I say loud and clear, must leave our politics once and for all. Before closing, I want to ask if some of those who have spoken to me in regard to my relationship with the Prime Minister and the party, one ex-minister had the gall to tell me, considering how much you have helped in the last election, this present government, what have they given you? I had to laugh because I was about to ask, how much would you give me in kind if I switched? I laughed to myself with glee when I said quite clearly what my father used to say to us: to thine own self be true, and thou canst be false to no man. And more so now, women. As I have mentioned once or twice before, asked me to come on, one has asked me to come on his show, which I declined. The question is why? There is something I learned a long time ago from Martin Luther King Jr., when he said quite succinctly that an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. Therefore, without a doubt, every man or woman must decide whether they will walk in the light of creative altruism, which Philip has brought to St. Lucian politics, or to continue in the darkness of destruction or destructive selfishness, which the leader of the opposition has brought into our politics, and still continue to preach that vile attitude and style of his. In essence, those of us who believe that Philip's coming to the fore was sent from above to lead us to that promised land I spoke about last week. Ladies and gentlemen, we must inculcate into our minds, that our Savior has given us, and to never forget that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are we doing for others and for this beloved country of ours we call St. Lucia? Therefore, I ask, as always, think of something that is very relevant to our lives, and that is, how responsible am I for the well-being of my fellow countrymen and women? Because to ignore evil is to become an accomplice to it. Therefore, once again, I say quite categorically that I've always tried to be honest, no matter how hard I am pushed to be dishonest. I firmly believe that to be honest is to confront the truth, no matter how unpleasant and inconvenient the truth may be. I believe sincerely that we must expose and face it if we are to achieve a better quality of life, not only for ourselves, but for those to come. My brothers and sisters, in the One Most High, I say to you, please, 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 go in peace to serve the One Most High, and to make every effort to rise from your own selfishness to the concerns of all St. Lucia. Blessed love to you all. And as you go in peace, never forget that you were born in the image and likeness of the Father in heaven. Therefore, if you were born black, be proud of that. God bless you all. And I say to you, good night. Good night. Go in peace to serve the one most high. Goodbye and good night. Blessed love.